Daniel Brooks stared at the woman across the table and realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Not because Maya Collins wasn't kind or interesting, but because for the first time in 4 years, someone was looking at him like he mattered beyond being a paycheck or a father. And that terrified him more than anything his ex-wife had ever thrown at him. One blind date, one conversation, one moment that would unravel the carefully controlled life he'd built to survive. This is a story about what happens when you stop running from connection and start facing what broke you in the first place. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay with me until the end. You won't regret it. Daniel Brooks was not a man who did spontaneous things anymore. At 32, his life had become a series of deliberate, measurable choices. Wake up at 5:30, make breakfast, pack his daughter's lunch, drop her at school by 7:45, work construction until 4, pick her up, dinner, homework, bedtime routine, repeat. It wasn't exciting, it wasn't romantic, but it was stable. And stability was the only currency that mattered after everything had fallen apart. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror that Saturday morning, electric razor buzzing in his hand, and wondered again why he'd agreed to this. "You look like you're about to throw up," his daughter Lily said from the hallway. Daniel glanced at her reflection. She was 7 years old, gap-toothed, and had inherited his dark hair and her mother's sharp observations. She leaned against the doorframe in her pajamas, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. "I'm not throwing up. You have that face." "What face?" "The one you make when you don't want to do something, but you're going to do it anyway." Daniel turned off the razor. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't listen." He couldn't argue with that. Lily had been reading him like a picture book since she learned to talk. It was one of the things that scared him most about her, how much she noticed, how much she understood without him having to explain. She'd been 3 when the divorce happened, but even then she'd known something was wrong. "It's just coffee," Daniel said, more to himself than to her. "With a lady." "With a person, yes." Lily tilted her head. "Is she nice?" "I don't know yet." "Then why are you going?" That was the question, wasn't it? Daniel set the razor down and turned to face her fully. "Because sometimes grown-ups do things even when they're not sure why. And because Uncle Marco won't stop bugging me if I don't." Lily wrinkled her nose. "Uncle Marco's annoying. He means well." "That's what you always say about annoying people." Daniel couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his mouth. "Go get dressed. Grandma's picking you up in 20 minutes. Lily didn't move. "Are you going to marry her?" "Lily, I'm just asking." "It's 1 cup of coffee." That's how it starts in movies. Daniel crossed the hallway and crouched down to her level. "I'm not looking to marry anyone. I'm going because a friend asked me to, and because it's polite. That's it. Okay?" Lily studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." "Okay." She turned to go, then paused. "But if she's nice, you should try to be nice back." "I'm always nice." Lily gave him a look that said she didn't believe that for a second, then disappeared into her room. Daniel stood there in the hallway, listening to the sound of drawers opening and closing, and felt the familiar weight settle back onto his shoulders. He wasn't good at this. He hadn't been good at it even when he was married. Sarah used to say he was emotionally unavailable, that talking to him was like talking to a wall. She wasn't entirely wrong, but after years of being told he wasn't enough, he'd learned to stop trying. It was easier that way, quieter. His phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Marco. "You didn't bail, did you?" Daniel. "Not yet." Marco. "Don't be a coward. She's great. You'll like her." Daniel. "You said that about the last one." Marco. "The last one was great too. You just didn't give her a chance." Daniel didn't respond. Marco meant well. He really did. But he also didn't understand what it was like to sit across from someone and feel the weight of expectation pressing down on you like a physical thing. Marco had been happily married for 6 years. He had 2 kids, a mortgage, and a wife who still looked at him like he hung the moon. He didn't know what it was like to wake up one day and realize the person you'd built your life around didn't want you anymore. Daniel finished getting ready in silence. Jeans, a clean shirt, his work boots, because they were the only shoes he owned that didn't have paint or drywall dust on them. He looked at himself in the mirror one last time and saw exactly what he expected. A tired man in his 30s who'd stopped believing in fairy tales a long time ago. His mother arrived right on time. She was a small, sturdy woman with silver hair and the kind of no-nonsense energy that had carried her through raising 3 boys on her own. She took one look at Daniel and raised an eyebrow. "You look like you're going to a funeral." "Good morning to you too, Mom." She kissed his cheek and stepped inside. "Where's my girl?" "Getting dressed." "And you're really going through with this?" "It's just coffee." "That's what your father said before he married me." Daniel sighed. "Not helping." His mother patted his arm. "I'm kidding, mostly. Just don't go in there expecting the worst. You might surprise yourself." Lily came bounding down the stairs, backpack in hand. "Grandma!" "There's my beauty." His mother scooped her up despite the fact that Lily was getting too big for it. "We're going to have so much fun today. I'm thinking pancakes, then the park, then maybe we'll bake cookies. Can we make the ones with chocolate chips? Is there any other kind?" Daniel watched them for a moment, feeling something tight in his chest loosen just slightly. His mother had been his anchor through everything, the divorce, the custody battles, the long nights when he didn't know how he was going to keep it together. She never judged, never pushed, just showed up. "Go," she said, glancing at him over Lily's shoulder. "And try to smile at least once. You've got a good smile when you use it." Daniel kissed Lily on the forehead. "Be good." "I'm always good." "That's debatable." Lily grinned, and then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft click. The house was suddenly unbearably quiet. Daniel stood there for a moment, keys in hand, and thought about calling Marco to cancel. It would be easy, one text, one excuse, but then Marco would just set up another one and another until Daniel ran out of reasons to say no. Better to get it over with. He grabbed his jacket and headed out. The cafe was called Birchwood Coffee, a small place on Main Street with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Daniel had been there a handful of times over the years, usually to grab something quick on his way to a job site. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and quiet, which he appreciated. He arrived 10 minutes early because being late felt disrespectful, and ordered a black coffee while he waited. The barista, a kid with a nose ring and a friendly smile, asked if he wanted anything else, and Daniel shook his head. He found a table near the window, sat down, and immediately regretted not bringing a book or his phone, or literally anything to do with his hands. He checked his watch. 9:03. The door opened and a woman stepped inside. She wasn't what he expected. That was the first thought that crossed his mind. Marco had said she was a teacher, and Daniel had pictured someone older, maybe a little stern. But the woman who walked in was young, mid-20s if he had to guess, with light brown hair pulled into a low ponytail and a canvas bag slung over one shoulder. She wore jeans, a simple sweater, and the kind of worn-in sneakers that suggested she walked a lot. There was nothing flashy about her. No makeup he could see. No jewelry except for small silver studs in her ears. She scanned the room, caught his eye, and gave a small, tentative smile. Daniel stood up, because that seemed like the right thing to do, and she walked over. "Daniel?" "Yeah, Maya." "That's me." She set her bag down and extended a hand. Her grip was firm but brief. "Thanks for meeting me. I know Marco kind of ambushed both of us into this." "He's good at that." She laughed, a soft, genuine sound, and sat down. "Do you want anything? I'm going to grab a tea." "I'm good. Thanks." She nodded and headed to the counter, and Daniel used the moment to steady himself. This was fine. It was just a conversation. He could do conversation. He did it all the time on job sites, with his crew, with Lily's teachers. This was no different. Except it was, and he knew it. Maya came back a few minutes later with a steaming mug and sat down across from him. She wrapped her hands around it like she was warming them, and looked at him with calm, hazel eyes. "So," she said, "Marco told me you're in construction." "Yeah, framing mostly. Some finish work when the schedule's tight." "Do you like it?" It was a simple question, but Daniel found himself pausing. Did he like it? He'd never really thought about it in those terms. It was work. It paid the bills. It kept him busy. "It's honest," he said finally. "I know what I'm walking into every day. No surprises." Maya nodded, like that made sense to her. "I get that. I think I'm the same way with teaching. It's predictable in a good way." "What grade?" "Second. So 7 and 8-year-olds, Lots of energy, lots of questions, lots of everything. Daniel thought of Lily. My daughter's in second grade. Oh yeah? Where? Pine Ridge Elementary. Maya's face lit up. That's where I teach. Daniel blinked. Seriously? Small world, right? What's her name? Lily Brooks. Maya's smile widened. I don't have her in my class, but I know Lily. She's in Mrs. Harmon's room. Sweet kid. Really smart. Something in Daniel's chest eased. He didn't know why, but hearing someone speak kindly about Lily felt like a small gift. Yeah, she's something. Does she live with you? Full time. Her mom's not really in the picture. Maya's expression shifted. Not to pity, but to something quieter. Understanding, maybe. That must be hard. It is what it is. She didn't push, which he appreciated. Instead, she took a sip of her tea and glanced out the window. Marco said you've lived here your whole life? Pretty much, born and raised. You? I moved here about 3 years ago. I grew up in the city, too much noise, too many people. I wanted something quieter. Pine Ridge is definitely that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Daniel considered. Depends on the day. Maya laughed again, and Daniel found himself relaxing just slightly. She wasn't pushing him for answers, wasn't digging into things he didn't want to talk about. She was just there, present, listening. They talked for a while about work, about the town, about small, inconsequential things that filled the space without demanding too much. Daniel learned that she liked hiking, that she read a lot, that she'd always wanted to teach but had taken a few years to figure out what that actually looked like. She asked him about construction, about what he was working on, about whether he'd always wanted to do that kind of work. Not really, Daniel admitted. I kind of fell into it. A buddy's dad ran a crew when I was 19, needed an extra set of hands. I figured I'd do it for a summer, make some money. Ended up staying. Do you ever think about doing something else? Not anymore. There was a pause. Maya looked at him, not with judgment, but with something that felt like curiosity. That sounds like there's a story there. Daniel shrugged. Not much of one. I just learned to appreciate steady work, that's all. She nodded slowly, and he could tell she understood there was more he wasn't saying, but she didn't press. Instead, she changed the subject, asking about Lily's school, about whether he was involved in any of the parent groups, about what Lily liked to do for fun. It was easy, in a way Daniel hadn't expected. Talking to Maya didn't feel like an interrogation. It felt like two people figuring out whether they could stand to be in the same room for an hour. And the truth was, he could. When their cups were empty and the cafe started filling up with the late morning crowd, Maya glanced at her watch. I should probably get going. I've got a ton of lesson planning to do before Monday. Yeah, I've got to pick up Lily soon anyway. They stood, and for a moment there was that awkward pause where neither of them quite knew what to say. This was nice, Maya said finally. I'm glad Marco made us do this. Yeah, me too. She smiled, genuine, warm, and slung her bag over her shoulder. If you ever want to grab coffee again, let me know. No pressure. Daniel nodded. I will. And then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her. Daniel stood there for a moment, alone in the cafe, and realized something unexpected. He actually meant it. Tig. Over the next few weeks, Daniel found himself thinking about Maya more than he wanted to admit. It wasn't anything dramatic. She didn't text him constantly or try to insert herself into his life. In fact, she didn't reach out at all, which somehow made it worse, because it meant the ball was in his court, and Daniel had never been good at making the first move. He saw her once at the school, just a glimpse across the parking lot as he was picking up Lily. She was walking a line of kids out to the buses, her ponytail swinging, her voice carrying over the noise. She didn't see him, and he didn't try to get her attention. It felt safer that way. But Lily noticed. That's Miss Collins, she said, craning her neck to look. Is it? She's nice. She helps out at recess sometimes. That's good. Lily gave him a look. You should say hi. She's working. So? You're allowed to say hi. Daniel didn't respond, and Lily huffed in exasperation. You're so weird, Dad. Thanks. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat on the couch with his phone in his hand and stared at Marco's contact. He could ask for Maya's number. It would be easy. Marco would give it to him in a heartbeat. but something about that felt wrong, like he'd be skipping a step, forcing something that didn't need to be forced. So instead, he did nothing. And then 2 days later, he ran into her at the grocery store. He was in the cereal aisle trying to decide between two brands Lily would inevitably complain about when he heard a voice behind him. "Daniel?" He turned, and there she was, holding a basket with vegetables and a loaf of bread. "Hey," he said, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "How's it going?" "Good. Just grabbing some stuff for the week. You?" "Same." She glanced at the cereal boxes in his hands. "Tough choice?" "You have no idea." Maya laughed, and something in Daniel's chest loosened. "If it helps, kids never care about the brand as long as it's got enough sugar." "That's what I keep telling myself." They stood there for a moment, and then Maya said, "I was going to text you, actually." "Yeah?" "Yeah, I was thinking, if you're not too busy, maybe we could do coffee again? Or something else, if you're sick of coffee." Daniel felt something shift. Not a big, dramatic thing, just a small, quiet realization that he didn't want to say no. "I'd like that," he said. Maya smiled. "Good. How about Saturday?" "Saturday works." "Great, I'll text you." And then she was gone, disappearing down the aisle with her basket, and Daniel was left standing there holding 2 boxes of cereal and feeling like something had just changed. Saturday came faster than he expected. Daniel dropped Lily off at his mother's house again, ignoring her knowing smile, and drove to the address Maya had sent him. It wasn't the cafe this time. It was a trailhead just outside of town, a place Daniel had driven past 100 times but never stopped at. Maya was already there, leaning against her car, wearing hiking boots and a jacket. She waved when she saw him. "You're early," she said. "So are you. I'm always early. It's a teacher thing." They started walking, following the trail as it wound through the trees. The air was cool, the leaves just starting to turn, and the only sounds were their footsteps and the occasional bird call. "I like this better than coffee," Maya said after a while. "Yeah?" "Yeah. I feel like I can think out here." Daniel nodded. He understood that. The woods had always felt easier to him than crowded spaces. There was no expectation out here, no pressure to fill the silence. They walked for a while without talking, and then Maya said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but Marco mentioned you'd been through a rough divorce. Is that something you're comfortable talking about?" Daniel felt his shoulders tense, but he didn't shut down. Not entirely. "What did he say?" "Not much. Just that it was hard, and that you've been doing the single dad thing for a while." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "It was bad. Not in a dramatic way, just slow. She wanted things I couldn't give her. I wanted things she didn't care about. We spent 4 years trying to make it work, and when it didn't, she left. Signed over custody without a fight. Haven't heard from her since." Maya didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was soft. "That must have hurt." "It did. For a long time." "And now?" Daniel thought about it. "Now I just try to focus on Lily. Everything else feels like noise." Maya nodded. They walked in silence for a bit, and then she said, "I get that. Not the exact same situation, but I get the instinct to shut everything else out." "What happened to you?" She hesitated, then said, "I was with someone for 3 years. We were engaged, and then I found out he'd been cheating on me for most of it. Didn't just leave. He gaslit me into thinking I was the problem. Took me a long time to untangle that." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time he saw past the calm exterior. There was weight there. Scars. She wasn't just kind, she was someone who'd survived something and come out the other side. "I'm sorry," he said. "Me too." They kept walking, and something between them shifted. It wasn't forced, it wasn't loud, but it was there, a quiet understanding that they were both carrying things, and neither of them was asking the other to fix it. By the time they looped back to the parking lot, the sun was higher, and Daniel realized he'd been out there for over 2 hours without checking his phone once. "Same time next week?" Maya asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'd like that." She smiled, and as he drove away, he thought about how strange it felt, wanting something again. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm Daniel hadn't expected. Saturday hikes became a fixture. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Maya never pushed him for more than he was willing to give, and Daniel found himself opening up in small ways, about Lily, about work, about the weight he'd been carrying for years. He learned things about her, too, that she was close with her younger sister, that she volunteered at a literacy program on Thursdays, that she liked terrible reality TV and didn't apologize for it, that she was funny in a dry, understated way that caught him off guard. Lily noticed the change in him, too. "You're smiling more," she said one night at dinner. "Am I?" "Yeah, it's weird." Daniel laughed. "Thanks." "I didn't say it was bad, just weird." He didn't tell her about Maya. Not yet. There was nothing to tell, really. They were just two people spending time together. But a part of him knew it was becoming something else, something that scared him and pulled him forward at the same time. And then, one Saturday, Maya asked if he wanted to grab dinner instead of hiking. "Like a date?" Daniel said before he could stop himself. Maya grinned. "If you want it to be." Daniel felt his face heat. I'm kidding, kind of. But yeah, I think we've moved past the casual coffee stage, don't you?" He thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, dinner sounds good." They went to a small Italian place on the edge of town, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. It was cheesy, but it worked. They ate pasta and talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was living. And when Maya reached across the table and took his hand, he didn't pull away. "I like this," she said quietly. "Me too." She smiled. "Good. Because I wasn't sure if you were ever going to admit it." Daniel laughed, really laughed, and something in him that had been locked tight for so long finally started to loosen. He didn't know what came next. He didn't know if this would last or fall apart like everything else. But for the first time in 4 years, he was willing to find out. By the time autumn turned to winter, Daniel had introduced Maya to Lily. It wasn't planned. Maya had stopped by to drop off a book she thought he'd like, and Lily had been home, sprawled on the couch with her homework. "Who's that?" Lily asked, peeking around Daniel's shoulder. "This is Maya. She's a friend." Lily studied her with the kind of scrutiny only a 7-year-old could manage. "Do you teach at my school?" "I do," Maya said, crouching down to her level. "I've seen you around. You're in Mrs. Harmon's class, right?" "Yeah." Lily tilted her head. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" Daniel felt his face go red. "Lily?" "It's okay," Maya said, smiling. "We're friends. Is that okay with you?" Lily considered this, then nodded. "I guess, as long as you're not mean. I'll do my best." That seemed to satisfy her, and she went back to her homework. Later, after Maya had left and Lily was getting ready for bed, she said, "I like her." "Yeah?" "Yeah, she didn't talk to me like I'm a baby. That's good." Daniel kissed her forehead. "It is good." And as he turned out the light, he thought about how strange it was, how quickly things could shift from unbearable to bearable, and then, slowly, to something that almost felt like hope. He still didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. Winter came to Pine Ridge the way it always did, quietly, without announcement. One morning, Daniel woke up, and there was frost on the windows, and by the time he dropped Lily at school, his breath hung in the air like smoke. The construction site slowed down. Outdoor work became harder, colder, more miserable. But Daniel didn't mind. Cold meant focus. Cold meant less talking, more getting the job done. What he didn't expect was how much his life outside of work had started to change. Maya had become a constant. Not in an overwhelming way. She didn't move in, didn't reorganize his life, didn't try to become someone she wasn't. But she was there. Saturday mornings turned into Sunday afternoons. Dinner became a regular thing. She started keeping a toothbrush at his place, and he kept a spare jacket in her car for the hikes they still took when the weather allowed it. Lily had accepted her with the kind of easy pragmatism only kids seemed capable of. She didn't ask a lot of questions, didn't make a big deal out of it. She just started setting 3 plates at the table instead of 2, and when Maya showed up for movie night with popcorn and a stack of DVDs from the library, Lily curled up next to her on the couch without hesitation. It should have felt perfect, and in a lot of ways it did. But Daniel had learned a long time ago that nothing stayed perfect for very long. The first crack came on a Tuesday in late January. Daniel was at the job site, framing out a new addition on a house near the edge of town. It was cold enough that his fingers ached even through his gloves, and the wind kept cutting through his jacket like it had a personal grudge. He was hammering in a stud when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Marco, standing a few feet away, glanced over. "You gonna get that?" Daniel pulled off one glove and checked the screen. 3 missed calls, all from a number he didn't recognize. "Probably spam," he muttered. But then a voicemail notification popped up, and something in his gut twisted. He stepped away from the frame, pressed the phone to his ear, and listened. The voice that came through was one he hadn't heard in over 3 years. "Daniel, it's Sarah. I know this is out of the blue, but I need to talk to you. It's about Lily. Call me back." The message ended, and Daniel stood there in the cold, staring at nothing. Marco walked over, frowning. "You good?" "Yeah." Daniel shoved the phone back in his pocket. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." Marco held up his hands. "All right, just saying." Daniel went back to work, but his hands were shaking, and it had nothing to do with the cold. "Sarah, after 3 years of silence, 3 years of nothing, no calls, no texts, no birthday cards for Lily, no child support checks, no acknowledgement that she had a daughter at all. And now, out of nowhere, she wanted to talk. It's about Lily." Daniel's jaw tightened. Whatever Sarah wanted, it wasn't going to be good. He waited until lunch to call her back. He sat in his truck with the heater running, staring at the number on his screen, and felt the same old anger bubbling up, the kind he thought he'd buried a long time ago. He pressed call. She picked up on the second ring. "Daniel." Her voice was the same, smooth, measured, the kind of voice that always made him feel like he was being handled. "What do you want, Sarah?" "It's good to hear your voice, too." "I don't have time for this. You said it was about Lily, so talk." There was a pause. Then she said, "I want to see her." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "No. Daniel, you don't get to do this. You don't get to disappear for 3 years and then call me up like nothing happened. I know I haven't been around. I know that. But I'm in a better place now, and I think it's time." "Time for what?" "For me to be part of her life again." Daniel laughed, sharp and bitter. "You signed away your rights. You don't get to just change your mind." "I didn't sign them away. I agreed to let you have primary custody. That's different. You haven't called. You haven't written. You haven't sent a single damn thing in 3 years. She doesn't even remember you." Sarah's voice hardened. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You walked out on her, Sarah. You chose to leave. Don't act like I kept her from you. I was in a bad place." "So was I, but I stayed." There was silence on the other end. Then Sarah said, quieter now, "I'm not trying to fight with you. I just want a chance to make things right." "You can't make this right." "I can try." Daniel closed his eyes. He wanted to hang up. He wanted to throw the phone out the window and pretend this conversation had never happened, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the exhaustion in her voice. Maybe it was the part of him that still remembered the woman he'd married before everything fell apart. "What do you want?" he said finally. "I want to see her, just once, just to talk. She's 7. She doesn't need this kind of confusion in her life." "She's my daughter, too." "Then where the hell have you been?" Sarah didn't answer. Daniel let out a long breath. "I need to think about this. That's all I'm asking. I'm not promising anything." "I know." He hung up without saying goodbye. For a long time, he just sat there in the truck, staring at the dashboard, trying to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. That night, he didn't tell Maya about the call. He didn't tell anyone. He picked up Lily from school, made dinner, helped her with her homework, and went through the motions like everything was normal. But his mind was somewhere else, turning over Sarah's words, trying to figure out what her angle was. Because there was always an angle with Sarah. She didn't do anything without a reason. Lily noticed, of course. "You're being quiet," she said at dinner. "I'm always quiet. Not like this. You're doing the thing where you stare at your food and don't eat it." Daniel looked down at his plate. She was right. He hadn't touched it. Sorry, just thinking about work. Lily narrowed her eyes. You're lying. I'm not lying. You're lying. You do this face when you lie. Daniel almost smiled despite himself. When did you become a detective? I've always been a detective. You just don't pay attention. He reached across the table and ruffled her hair. Eat your vegetables. You didn't eat yours. Do as I say, not as I do. Lily rolled her eyes but took a bite of broccoli, and Daniel felt the knot in his chest loosen just slightly. Later, after Lily was in bed, he sat on the couch with his phone in his hand and thought about calling Maya. She'd want to know. She'd have an opinion. And part of him wanted to hear it. But another part of him, the part that had spent years keeping everything locked down tight, didn't want to let her in on this. Because this was his problem, his past, and dragging her into it felt like asking too much. So he didn't call. Instead, he sat there in the dark, alone, and tried to figure out what the right answer was. The next few days passed in a blur. Daniel went to work, came home, took care of Lily, and tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in his gut that something was about to go sideways. Sarah texted him twice, asking if he'd thought about it. He didn't respond. On Thursday night, Maya came over for dinner. She brought groceries and insisted on cooking, which Daniel didn't argue with because her cooking was about 10 times better than his. Lily helped her chop vegetables, chattering away about something that had happened at recess, and Daniel watched them from the doorway, feeling that same strange tightness in his chest. This was good. This was stable. He didn't want anything to mess it up. You're hovering, Maya said without turning around. I'm not hovering. You're definitely hovering, Lily giggled. He always hovers. I'm just standing here. Maya glanced over her shoulder and gave him a look. Go set the table or something. You're making me nervous. Daniel did as he was told, and by the time they sat down to eat, the knot in his chest had loosened again. This was what normal felt like. This was what he wanted. But after dinner, when Lily had gone upstairs to play, Maya leaned back in her chair and said, Okay, what's going on? Daniel looked up. What do you mean? You've been weird all week, distracted, and don't say it's work, because I know you better than that. He hesitated. Then he said, It's nothing. Daniel. He set down his fork. Sarah called. Maya went very still. Your ex? Yeah. What did she want? She wants to see Lily. Maya didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, What did you tell her? That I'd think about it. And have you? Daniel rubbed a hand over his face. I don't know what the right answer is. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell, but part of me thinks maybe Lily deserves the chance to know her mom. I don't know. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. What does your gut say? That this is going to blow up in my face. Then maybe listen to that. But what if I'm wrong? What if keeping her away is worse? Maya squeezed his hand. I can't answer that for you, but I can tell you that whatever you decide, you're doing it because you're trying to protect Lily, and that counts for something. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time all week, he felt like he could breathe. Thanks, he said quietly. Anytime. But the decision didn't get any easier. Sarah called again on Saturday. This time Daniel answered. I need an answer, Daniel. I'm still thinking. It's been a week, and it's a big decision. I'm not rushing this. I'm not asking for custody. I'm asking for an afternoon. You don't get to just walk back into her life whenever it's convenient for you. I know that, but I'm trying to do the right thing here. Daniel laughed bitterly. The right thing? The right thing would have been staying. The right thing would have been not disappearing for 3 years. I made mistakes. I know that, but I'm trying to fix them. You can't fix this, Sarah. You can't just snap your fingers and undo 3 years of nothing. I'm not trying to undo anything. I'm trying to move forward. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, If I let you see her, it's on my terms. You don't get to show up and play mom for a day and then disappear again. You don't get to hurt her. I won't. If you do, I will make sure you never see her again. Do you understand me? I understand. Daniel closed his eyes. One afternoon, that's it. And I'm there the whole time. Okay. I mean it, Sarah. You screw this up, and we're done. I won't screw it up. He wanted to believe her. He really did. But he'd believed her before, and it had cost him everything. I'll text you a time and place, he said, and hung up before she could say anything else. That night, he told Lily. She was sitting on the couch, coloring in a book Maya had given her, when Daniel sat down next to her. Can I talk to you about something? Lily looked up. Are you and Maya breaking up? What? No, why would you think that? Because that's what happens when people say we need to talk. Daniel almost laughed. We're not breaking up. This is about something else. Lily set down her crayon. Okay. Daniel took a breath. Do you remember your mom? Lily's face went blank. Not really. She called me. She wants to see you. Lily didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, Why? I don't know. She says she wants to be part of your life again. Does she want to take me away? No, nothing like that. She just wants to talk, to spend some time with you. Lily looked down at her coloring book. Do I have to? No. If you don't want to, you don't have to. This is your choice. She was quiet. Then she said, Will you be there? The whole time. And Maya? Daniel hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. I want Maya there. Lily, if I have to see her, I want Maya there. Please. Daniel looked at his daughter and saw the same fear he'd been carrying all week, and he realized that this wasn't just about him and Sarah. This was about Lily, and if having Maya there made her feel safer, then that's what they'd do. Okay, he said. I'll ask her. Lily nodded and went back to coloring, but Daniel could see her hands shaking. He texted Maya that night. Daniel, Sarah wants to see Lily. I said yes. Lily wants you there. Is that okay? Maya's response came a few minutes later. Maya, of course. Whatever you need. Daniel, I don't know if this is a good idea. Maya, probably not, but we'll figure it out. Daniel stared at the screen for a long time, then he typed, Daniel, thank you. Maya, always. The meeting was set for the following Sunday at a park halfway between Pine Ridge and the city where Sarah was living. Neutral ground, public, safe. Daniel barely slept the night before. He woke up early, made breakfast, and tried to act like everything was normal. Lily was quiet, picking at her food, and Daniel didn't push her. Maya showed up just after 9, carrying a thermos of coffee and a calm presence that made Daniel feel like maybe this wouldn't be a complete disaster. You ready? She asked. No. Me neither. They drove in silence, Lily in the back seat with her headphones on, staring out the window. Daniel's hands were tight on the wheel, and Maya reached over and rested her hand on his knee. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. When they pulled into the park, Sarah was already there. She was standing near a bench, hands shoved in her coat pockets, looking nervous. Daniel's first thought was that she looked older, tired, like the years hadn't been kind to her either. He parked the truck and looked back at Lily. You okay? Lily nodded, but she didn't move. We don't have to do this, Daniel said. I know. Okay. They got out of the truck, and Sarah turned, her eyes landing on Lily. For a moment, her expression cracked, something raw and unguarded, and then she pulled it back together. Hi, Lily, she said softly. Lily didn't respond. She moved closer to Daniel, her hand finding his. Sarah's gaze shifted to Maya, and her expression tightened. Who's this? This is Maya, Daniel said evenly. She's part of Lily's life. Sarah's jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. Can I talk to Lily alone? No. Daniel, I said no. You want to talk to her? You do it with us here. Sarah looked like she wanted to fight him on it, but something in his expression must have told her not to push. She nodded and sat down on the bench. Daniel and Maya stayed standing, Lily between them. I know you don't remember me, Sarah started, her voice shaking slightly. And I know I haven't been around. I'm sorry for that. I really am. Lily said nothing. I want to try to be a part of your life again, if you'll let me. Lily looked up at Daniel. He gave her a small nod, letting her know it was okay to speak. Why did you leave? Lily asked, her voice quiet but steady. Sarah flinched. Because I wasn't ready to be a mom. I thought leaving would be better for you. It wasn't. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm sorry. Lily stared at her for a long moment, Then she said, I don't know you. I know, but I'd like to change that. Lily looked up at Daniel again. Can we go home now? Daniel's chest ached. Yeah, kiddo, we can go. He started to turn, but Sarah stood up. Wait, please. She doesn't want to be here, Sarah. Just give me 5 more minutes, please. Daniel looked at Lily. She nodded, barely, and he stayed. Sarah crouched down to Lily's level. I know I messed up. I know I can't fix it overnight, but I want to try. I want to know you, and I want you to know me. If you'll give me a chance. Lily was quiet. Then she said, You hurt my dad. Sarah's face crumpled. I know. And you hurt me. I know. I don't know if I can forgive you. That's okay, Sarah said, her voice breaking. You don't have to, but I'll keep trying, if you'll let me. Lily didn't answer. She just turned and walked back to the truck. Daniel looked at Sarah. Don't call again unless Lily wants you to. Daniel, I mean it. This is her choice now, not yours, not mine, hers. He turned and followed his daughter, Maya, close behind him, and left Sarah standing there alone. In the truck, Lily was silent. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. He just drove. Maya reached back and squeezed Lily's hand, and Lily held on tight. When they got home, Lily went straight to her room. Daniel stood in the kitchen, feeling like he'd just survived something he didn't fully understand. Maya came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. She's strong, Maya said quietly. She shouldn't have to be. I know, but she is, and so are you. Daniel turned and pulled her close, and for a long time they just stood there, holding on. The week after the meeting in the park felt like walking through fog. Daniel went through the motions, work, dinner, bedtime, but his mind kept circling back to the look on Lily's face when she'd said those words. You hurt my dad, and you hurt me. She hadn't cried, hadn't raised her voice. She'd just stated it like a fact, and somehow that made it worse. Lily didn't bring it up again. She went to school, came home, did her homework, played with her toys. But Daniel noticed the way she stayed closer to him than usual, the way she asked Maya to stay for dinner more often, the way she checked, without saying it outright, that the people around her weren't going anywhere. Maya noticed too. She's testing us, Maya said one night after Lily had gone to bed. They were sitting on the couch, the TV on, but neither of them watching it. What do you mean? She's making sure we're solid, that we're not going to disappear like Sarah did. Daniel looked down at his hands. I'm not going anywhere. I know that, but she's 7. She doesn't know how to process abandonment. So she's watching, waiting to see if we'll prove her wrong. And what if we can't? Maya shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. Then we keep showing up anyway. That's all we can do. Daniel wrapped an arm around her and pulled her in. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. But 2 days later, Sarah called again. Daniel was at work when his phone buzzed. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. I told you not to call unless Lily wanted to talk, he said without preamble. I know, but I need to explain something. There's nothing to explain. Daniel, please, just listen. He sighed and stepped away from the noise of the job site, the sound of saws and hammers fading into the background. You've got 2 minutes. Sarah took a breath. I know I handled that badly. I know I hurt her, but I need you to understand that I'm not trying to disrupt her life. I'm trying to be part of it. You had 3 years to be part of it. You chose not to. I was scared. I didn't know how to be a mother. I still don't. But I'm trying. Trying isn't good enough, Sarah. Lily deserves more than someone who's just trying. I know that. Her voice cracked. But I don't know what else to do. I can't undo the past. I can't take back the time I missed. All I can do is try to move forward. Daniel closed his eyes. You want to move forward? Then stop making this about you. Stop calling me. Stop pushing. Let her come to you when she's ready, if she's ever ready. And if she's not, then that's the consequence of your choices. There was a long silence. Then Sarah said quietly, I miss her. You don't get to miss her. You gave up that right. I never stopped being her mother. Yes, you did, the day you walked out and didn't look back. Sarah didn't respond, and Daniel hung up. He stood there for a moment, staring at the half-finished frame in front of him, and felt the old anger rising up again. He thought he was past this, thought he'd buried it deep enough that it couldn't touch him anymore. But Sarah had a way of dragging it all back to the surface. Marco wandered over, tool belt slung low on his hips. "You good, man?" "Yeah." "You don't look good." Daniel picked up his hammer. "I'm fine." Marco didn't push, but Daniel could feel him watching, the way he'd been watching for weeks now. Marco had known him long enough to know when something was off, and Daniel appreciated that he didn't pry. Some things didn't need to be said out loud. That night, Daniel came home to find Maya already there. She was in the kitchen with Lily, helping her make cookies. Flour dusted the counter, and the smell of vanilla filled the air. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made Daniel's chest tighten. "Dad!" Lily looked up, grinning. "We're making chocolate chip cookies. You want one?" "They're not done yet," Maya said, smiling. "But we'll save you some." Daniel forced a smile. "Sounds good." He dropped his keys on the counter and headed upstairs to shower, needing a moment to pull himself together. The hot water helped, but not enough. By the time he came back down, Lily and Maya were sitting at the table, eating warm cookies and talking about some book Lily was reading for school. He sat down with them, accepted a cookie, and tried to focus on the conversation, but his mind kept drifting back to Sarah's voice. "I miss her." Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Maya stayed behind to help clean up. They worked in silence for a while, washing dishes and wiping down counters, and then Maya said, "She called again, didn't she?" Daniel didn't look up. "Yeah." "What did she want?" "To explain, to make excuses, I don't know." Maya dried a plate and set it on the rack. "What did you say?" "That she needs to back off, that this is Lily's choice, not hers." "Good." Daniel glanced at her. "You think I'm doing the right thing?" "I think you're doing the only thing you can do. You're protecting Lily. That's what matters." "What if I'm wrong? What if keeping Sarah away is worse in the long run?" Maya set down the towel and turned to face him. "You're not keeping her away. You're giving Lily space to decide for herself. That's not the same thing." "It feels the same." "It's not." She reached out and took his hand. "You're a good dad, Daniel. Stop second-guessing yourself." He wanted to believe her, but the doubt was still there, gnawing at the edges of everything he thought he knew. The following week, things started to unravel in ways Daniel didn't see coming. It started small. Sarah began texting him daily. Not long messages, just short ones. "Thinking of you both. Hope Lily's doing well. Let me know if she wants to talk." Daniel ignored them at first, but they kept coming, persistent and relentless, like water wearing down stone. Then she started calling the school. Daniel found out when Lily's teacher, Mrs. Harmon, pulled him aside during pickup one afternoon. "Mr. Brooks, can I talk to you for a moment?" Daniel's stomach dropped. "Is Lily okay?" "She's fine, but we had a situation today. A woman called the office claiming to be Lily's mother. She wanted to know about Lily's schedule, her activities, whether she could come visit during lunch." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What did you tell her?" "We told her we couldn't release that information without your authorization. But she was insistent. She said she had a right to know." "She doesn't." Mrs. Harmon nodded. "I figured as much. I wanted to give you a heads up in case she tries again." "Thank you." "Of course. And Mr. Brooks, if you need us to put a note in Lily's file about who's authorized to pick her up or visit, we can do that." "I'd appreciate that." He walked out of the school with Lily's hand in his, trying to keep his expression neutral. But inside, he was furious. Sarah didn't get to do this. She didn't get to show up and start poking around in Lily's life without permission. When they got home, he called her. She picked up on the first ring. "Daniel, what the hell are you doing?" "What are you talking about?" "You called Lily's school. You don't get to do that." "I just wanted to know how she was doing." "That's not your call to make. You want to know how she's doing? You ask me. You don't go behind my back." "I'm her mother." "No, you're not. Not anymore. You gave that up when you left." "I'm still her legal parent." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "If you pull something like this again, I will file for a restraining order. Do you understand me?" "You wouldn't." "Try me." There was silence. Then Sarah said, her voice shaking, "I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I just want to be part of her life." "Then stop acting like you're entitled to it. You're not." He hung up before she could respond. That night, He told Maya everything. They sat on the porch, the cold air biting at their skin, and he laid it all out, the texts, the calls to the school, the way Sarah kept pushing and pushing like she thought she could force her way back in. I don't know what to do, Daniel admitted. Part of me wants to cut her off completely. But what if that's the wrong move? What if Lily ends up resenting me for it later? Maya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You're asking the wrong question." "What do you mean?" "You keep asking what's best for Sarah, or what's best in some hypothetical future. But the real question is, what's best for Lily right now?" Daniel looked at her. "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You've always known. You're just scared to trust yourself." He wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because she was right. He'd spent so many years being told he was wrong, being told he didn't understand, that he'd stopped trusting his own instincts. But those instincts had kept Lily safe. They'd kept her fed, clothed, loved. They'd been enough. "I think I need to talk to a lawyer," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "I think that's smart." The lawyer's office was small, tucked into a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a tax prep service. Daniel sat in the waiting room, knee bouncing, until a woman in her 50s called his name. Her name was Angela Reeves, and she had the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that put Daniel at ease immediately. "So," she said, flipping through the paperwork he'd filled out, "your ex-wife signed over primary custody 3 years ago and hasn't had contact since. Now she's trying to reestablish a relationship." "Yeah." "And you're concerned about her overstepping." "She called the school. She's texting me constantly. She showed up out of nowhere and expected Lily to just accept her back into her life." Angela nodded, making notes. "Does the custody agreement specify visitation rights?" "No, she signed them away." "Good. That gives us leverage. If she wants visitation now, she'll need to petition the court. And given her 3-year absence, a judge is unlikely to grant anything substantial without a gradual reintegration plan." "What does that mean?" "It means supervised visits, probably in a neutral location. Therapy for Lily to help her process the situation. A slow build, not a free-for-all." Daniel felt some of the tension in his shoulders ease. So she can't just take her. Not without going through the legal system. And even then, she'd have an uphill battle. What do I need to do? Document everything. Every call, every text, every attempt at contact. If she shows up at the school again, report it. Build a paper trail. And if she escalates, we file for a protective order. Daniel nodded. "Okay. You're doing the right thing," Angela said. "Protecting your daughter is always the right thing." He left the office feeling lighter than he had in weeks. It wasn't over, but at least he had a plan. At least he knew what he was up against. But 2 days later, everything exploded. Daniel was at work when his phone rang. It was the school. "Mr. Brooks, this is Principal Dalton. I need you to come down here immediately." His heart stopped. "Is Lily okay?" "She's fine. But we have a situation." He was there in 10 minutes, parking haphazardly and running into the building. The receptionist directed him to the principal's office, and when he walked in, he saw Lily sitting in a chair, looking small and scared. And standing next to her, arguing with the principal, was Sarah. Daniel's vision went red. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah turned, her face pale. "Daniel, you don't get to be here." "I just wanted to see her." "You don't have that right." Principal Dalton stepped in. "Mr. Brooks?" Ms. Brooks arrived about 20 minutes ago, claiming she had permission to take Lily out of school early. When we asked for written authorization, she became agitated. "She doesn't have permission. She doesn't have any rights here." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm her mother." "No, you're not. Not anymore." Lily stood up and ran to Daniel, wrapping her arms around his waist. He held her tight, feeling her shake. "I want you gone," Daniel said, his voice low and dangerous. "Now." "Daniel, please. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." Sarah looked at Lily, her face crumpling. "Baby, I just wanted to talk to you." "Don't talk to her. Don't look at her. Just go." For a moment, Sarah looked like she might fight him, but then something in her broke, and she turned and walked out, her shoulders shaking. Principal Dalton cleared his throat. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Brooks. We should have verified her identity before letting her into the building. I want her banned from the premises, effective immediately." "Consider it done." Daniel nodded and crouched down to Lily's level. "You okay?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to see her anymore. You don't have to, I promise. She scared me. I know. I'm sorry. Lily buried her face in his shoulder and Daniel stood, holding her close. He thanked the principal and walked out of the building, carrying his daughter to the truck. On the drive home, Lily didn't say a word. Daniel didn't push. He just let her sit, processing, while he tried to keep his hands from shaking on the wheel. When they got home, Maya was already there. Daniel had texted her from the school, and she'd left work early. She met them at the door, her face tight with worry. Is she okay? She's scared. Maya crouched down. Hey, Lily, you want to come inside? I brought your favorite ice cream. Lily nodded, and Maya took her hand, leading her into the house. Daniel stood on the porch for a moment, trying to pull himself together. Then he pulled out his phone and called Angela Reeves. We need to file that protective order, he said when she picked up. Today. What happened? He told her everything, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. By the time he finished, Angela was already typing. I'll have the paperwork ready by end of day. We'll file first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you. Daniel, you did good. You protected your daughter. That's what matters. He hung up and went inside. Maya had Lily on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a bowl of ice cream in her hands. She was talking softly, telling some story about a kid in her class, and Lily was listening, her breathing slowly evening out. Daniel sat down next to them, and Lily immediately leaned into him. I'm sorry, Dad. You have nothing to be sorry for. I didn't want to make you mad. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at her, and I'm going to make sure she can't do this again. Lily looked up at him, her eyes red. Promise? Promise. She nodded and went back to her ice cream, and Daniel caught Maya's eye over her head. She gave him a small, sad smile, and he knew she understood. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but they'd face it together. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Daniel and Maya sat at the kitchen table, the protective order paperwork spread out in front of them. This is really happening, Maya said quietly. Yeah. Are you okay? Daniel looked at her. No, but I will be. She reached across the table and took his hand. What do you need? I need you to stay. I'm not going anywhere. I mean it, Maya. This is about to get messy. Sarah's not going to take this lying down, and I don't want you caught in the middle of it. I'm already in the middle of it. I chose to be here, and I'm not leaving. Daniel felt something in his chest crack open. Why? Because I love you, and I love Lily, and I'm not walking away just because things got hard. He stared at her, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself believe it. I love you too, he said, the words rough and unfamiliar in his mouth. Maya smiled, tears in her eyes. I know. They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, while the world outside grew dark and quiet. And for the first time since Sarah had called, Daniel felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to make it through this. But he also knew the hardest part was still ahead. The protective order was filed the next morning. By afternoon, Sarah had been served. And by evening, Daniel's phone was blowing up with angry, desperate messages. He didn't read them. He just forwarded them to Angela and blocked Sarah's number. That night, Lily asked if she could sleep in his room. Daniel said yes, and she curled up on the bed with her stuffed rabbit, her breathing slow and steady. Maya stayed over, sleeping on the couch, just in case. And Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The protective order bought them 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks where Daniel could breathe without waiting for the phone to ring. 2 weeks where Lily stopped looking over her shoulder every time they left the house. 2 weeks where Maya stayed close, steady, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Daniel thought maybe that was it. Maybe Sarah had finally gotten the message. Maybe she'd realized she couldn't force her way back into a life she'd abandoned and would just disappear again. He should have known better. The first sign came on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel was at the job site, securing the last of the roof trusses on a house that was already 3 weeks behind schedule, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks? The voice was official, clipped. This is Jennifer Hale from Child Protective Services. Daniel's blood went cold. What's this about? We received a report regarding your daughter, Lily Brooks. I'd like to schedule a home visit to follow up. A report? What kind of report? I can't discuss the details over the phone, but it's standard procedure. Can you be available tomorrow at 10? Daniel's mind was racing. Yeah, I can be there. Good. We'll see you then. She hung up, and Daniel stood there on the roof, the wind cutting through his jacket, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had called CPS. Someone had reported him, and he knew exactly who. He called Angela Reeves from the truck during lunch break, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. She filed a complaint, Angela said after Daniel explained. It's a common tactic in custody disputes. Make the other parent look unfit. I'm not unfit. I know that, and CPS will figure that out too. But you need to be prepared. They're going to inspect your home, interview Lily, ask a lot of questions. Stay calm, be cooperative, and document everything. What did she say in the report? I don't know yet. They won't tell you until the visit. But Daniel, listen to me. This is her playing dirty. Don't let it shake you. You've done everything right. Daniel closed his eyes. What if they don't see it that way? They will. Trust me. He wanted to believe her. But the knot in his stomach wouldn't loosen. That night, he told Maya. They were sitting at the kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed, and Daniel laid it out in flat, emotionless sentences because if he let himself feel anything, he'd lose it completely. Maya's face went pale. She called CPS on you? Yeah. That's insane. You're the best father I've ever seen. Doesn't matter. She's making it look like I'm not. What did she say? I don't know yet. The caseworker's coming tomorrow. Maya reached across the table and gripped his hand. We'll get through this. What if they take her? They won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because anyone who spends 5 minutes in this house will see that Lily is loved and safe and cared for. Sarah can make up whatever she wants, but the truth is right here. Daniel wanted to believe her, but he'd learned a long time ago that the truth didn't always matter. Sometimes people saw what they wanted to see. I need to clean, he said, standing up abruptly. The house needs to be spotless. They're going to look at everything. Daniel, the house is fine. No, it's not. There's dishes in the sink, Lily's toys are all over the living room, the bathroom needs scrubbing. Maya stood and put her hands on his shoulders. Stop, breathe. I can't. Yes, you can. You're spiraling, and I need you to stop and listen to me. Daniel looked at her, and the steadiness in her eyes made something in him crack. This is not your fault, Maya said firmly. Sarah is the one who walked away. Sarah is the one who's trying to manipulate the system. You have done nothing wrong. Do you hear me? I hear you. Then believe me. He nodded, but the fear was still there, coiled tight in his chest. They cleaned anyway. Not because the house was dirty, but because Daniel needed something to do with his hands. Maya didn't argue. She just helped, moving quietly through the rooms, straightening pillows and wiping down surfaces, while Daniel scrubbed the kitchen floor like he could erase the past 3 years if he just worked hard enough. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. Maya made him sit down and drink a glass of water, and then she pulled him into a hug that he didn't realize he needed until he was holding on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. We'll get through this, she said again, and this time, Daniel let himself believe it. The caseworker arrived at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning. Jennifer Hale was a woman in her 40s with a tired face and a clipboard. She introduced herself politely, shook Daniel's hand, and asked if she could come in. Of course, Daniel said, stepping aside. She walked through the house slowly, taking notes. Daniel followed at a distance, his jaw tight, watching as she opened the refrigerator, checked the smoke detectors, looked into Lily's room. Everything seems in order, she said finally. Can I speak with Lily? She's at school. I can pick her up if you need. No, that's fine. I'll stop by the school this afternoon. She flipped through her notes. Mr. Brooks, I need to ask you some questions about the report we received. Okay. The complainant alleged that you've been emotionally unavailable to your daughter, that she's often left in the care of others, and that you've been in a volatile relationship that's created an unstable environment. Daniel felt his hands clench into fists. That's not true. Any of it. Can you walk me through a typical day? He did. He told her about waking up early, making breakfast, dropping Lily at school, working a full day, picking her up, helping with homework, making dinner, bedtime routine. He told her about his mother, who helped when he needed it. He told her about Maya, who had become part of their lives in the last few months. And the relationship with Maya, is that stable? Yes. The report suggested there's been conflict. There's been no conflict. We're together. We're happy. Jennifer made a note. And Lily's biological mother, when was the last time she had contact? A few weeks ago. I filed a protective order because she showed up at the school without permission and scared Lily. I see. And prior to that? She hadn't contacted us in 3 years. Jennifer's eyebrows lifted slightly, but her expression remained neutral. I'll need to speak with Lily and verify a few things. But from what I'm seeing here, Mr. Brooks, I don't have any immediate concerns. Daniel felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. So we're okay? I'll file my report after I speak with Lily. But yes, I think you're okay. She left, and Daniel stood in the living room staring at the door, trying to process what had just happened. His phone rang. Angela, how did it go? She said everything looks fine. She's going to talk to Lily this afternoon. Good. That's good. Sarah's complaint is going to fall apart as soon as CPS does their due diligence. What happens after that? We document it. We add it to the case file. And if Sarah tries anything else, we use it to show a pattern of harassment. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I'm tired, Angela. I'm so damn tired of this. I know, but you're almost through it. Just hold on a little longer. He hung up and sat down on the couch, his head in his hands. Maya found him there an hour later. She'd taken a half day at work, claiming a personal emergency, and when she walked in and saw him sitting there, she didn't say anything. She just sat down next to him and put her hand on his back. She's not going to win, Maya said quietly. She's already won. Look at what she's doing to us. No, she's making noise, that's all. But noise doesn't change the truth. Daniel looked at her. What if the truth isn't enough? It will be. It has to be. They sat there in silence, and then Maya said, I called in sick next week. I'm taking a few days off. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. I want to be here. For you and for Lily. Daniel felt something in his chest tighten. I don't deserve you. Stop saying that. You deserve someone who shows up. That's all I'm doing. It's more than that. Maya smiled, sad and small. I know. That afternoon, Jennifer Hale interviewed Lily at school. Daniel wasn't allowed to be there, which made him feel like he was going to crawl out of his skin. He sat in the truck in the parking lot, waiting, watching the clock tick forward with agonizing slowness. When Lily came out, she looked tired but okay. Daniel got out of the truck and met her halfway. How'd it go? Fine, she asked me a bunch of questions. Like what? Like if I feel safe at home, if you take care of me, if I like Maya. Lily shrugged. I told her the truth. Which is? Lily looked up at him with those sharp, knowing eyes. That you're the best dad ever, and that lady doesn't know what she's talking about. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He crouched down and pulled her into a hug. I love you, kid. I know. Can we get ice cream? He laughed, rough and surprised. Yeah, we can get ice cream. They went to the small shop on Main Street, the one that had been there since Daniel was a kid. Lily got cookie dough in a waffle cone, and Daniel got black coffee because he couldn't stomach anything sweet. They sat at one of the outdoor tables, even though it was cold, and Lily swung her legs and talked about something that had happened at recess. Daniel watched her, this small, fierce person he'd somehow been trusted to raise, and felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. He'd tried so hard to give her stability, to give her a life that was safe and predictable and free from the chaos that had defined his marriage. And now Sarah was trying to rip it all apart. But Lily didn't look scared. She looked happy. And that had to count for something. Dad? Yeah? Are you okay? Daniel blinked. I'm fine. Why? You're doing the staring thing again. Sorry. Lily licked her cone. Is this about Mom? Daniel hesitated. Yeah. Is she going to take me away? No, I won't let that happen. Promise? Promise. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to her ice cream. And Daniel sat there, holding his coffee, and hoped like hell he could keep that promise. 2 days later, Angela called with an update. CPS closed the case. No findings. Jennifer Hale's report stated that Lily is well cared for, the home is safe, and there's no evidence to support the allegations. Daniel felt like he could breathe for the first time in days. So that's it? That's it. Sarah's complaint is on record as unfounded. If she tries this again, it'll hurt her credibility. What's our next move? We wait. The protective order is in place. She can't contact you or Lily. If she violates it, we file for contempt and push for a more permanent solution. And if she doesn't, then we've won. Daniel wasn't sure he believed in winning anymore, but he'd take what he could get. That night, he told Maya and Lily the news over dinner. Lily didn't react much. She just nodded and asked if she could have seconds on mashed potatoes. But Maya's eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table and squeezed Daniel's hand so hard it hurt. "See," she said, "I told you." "You did. Are you going to admit I was right?" "Don't push it." She laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen like sunlight. For the first time in weeks, Daniel let himself relax. The house was quiet. Lily was safe. Maya was there. And Sarah, for now, was gone. But the peace didn't last. A week later, Daniel got a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm he didn't recognize, and when he opened it, his stomach dropped. Sarah was filing for joint custody. The letter laid it out in cold legal language. She was claiming that she'd made efforts to reconnect, that Daniel had obstructed her attempts, and that Lily deserved a relationship with both parents. She was asking for a formal custody arrangement, alternating weekends, holidays, summer breaks. Daniel read it twice, then called Angela. "She's escalating," Angela said. "The protective order and the failed CPS complaint didn't scare her off. She's going all in." "Can she win?" "It's hard to say. Courts generally favor parental involvement, even when one parent has been absent. But her 3-year gap works in our favor. So does the protective order. What do I need to do?" "We fight. We build a case showing that you've been the sole stable parent and that reintroducing her now would be disruptive and harmful to Lily. We get character witnesses, school records, medical records, anything that shows you've been there and she hasn't." "Okay." "Daniel, this is going to get ugly. Are you ready for that?" He looked across the room at Lily, who was curled up on the couch with a book, completely oblivious to the storm coming her way. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and sleepless nights. Angela prepared their case with the kind of ruthless efficiency that Daniel was grateful for. She pulled school records showing perfect attendance and Lily's strong academic performance. She got statements from Lily's teachers, from Daniel's mother, from Marco. She documented every text, every call, every interaction Sarah had initiated. Maya offered to testify too. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. They were sitting on the porch, bundled up against the cold, watching the sun set over the trees. "Of course I'm sure. Why wouldn't I be? Because this is going to put you in the middle of it. Sarah's lawyer is going to come after you. They're going to try to make it look like you're the reason she can't see Lily." "Let them try. I'm not going anywhere." Daniel looked at her, and for the 100th time, he wondered how he'd gotten this lucky. "I don't want you to get hurt." "I won't. I can handle it." "Maya." "Daniel, stop. I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect. I chose to be here. I chose you and Lily. And I'm not backing down just because Sarah wants to throw a tantrum." He reached out and took her hand. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me. This is what people do when they love each other." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and real, and Daniel realized something. He'd spent so long being afraid of this, of letting someone in, of trusting someone not to leave, that he'd almost missed the fact that it had already happened. Maya wasn't going anywhere. She'd proven that 100 times over. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he said quietly. "Good thing you don't have to find out." The court date was set for mid-March. Angela warned him it would be rough, but nothing could have prepared Daniel for the reality of sitting in a courtroom while Sarah's lawyer painted him as controlling, emotionally distant, and obstructive. They twisted everything. The protective order became evidence of his refusal to co-parent. His decision to limit contact was framed as alienation. Even Maya's presence in Lily's life was used against him, proof that he'd moved on and was trying to replace Sarah. Daniel sat there, his jaw tight, his hands clenched under the table, and listened to them tear apart the life he'd built. Then it was Angela's turn. She was calm, methodical, and devastating. She walked the judge through Sarah's 3-year absence, the lack of child support, the lack of contact. She presented the school records, the teacher statements, the CPS report. She called Daniel's mother to the stand, who testified that Daniel had been the sole caregiver since Lily was 3 years old. And then she called Maya. Maya walked to the stand in a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her face calm. She answered every question with the kind of quiet confidence that made Daniel's chest ache. "How long have you known the Brooks family?" Angela asked. "About 6 months. And in that time, what have you observed about Daniel's relationship with his daughter?" "He's devoted to her. Everything he does is centered around making sure she's safe and happy. He's patient, he's present, and he's the best father I've ever seen." Sarah's lawyer stood. "Objection. The witness is clearly biased." The judge looked at Maya. "Ms. Collins, are you in a romantic relationship with Mr. Brooks?" "Yes." "Then the objection stands. The witness's testimony will be considered with that context in mind." Angela nodded and continued. "Ms. Collins, have you ever witnessed Daniel being anything other than loving and supportive toward Lily?" "No, never." "And have you witnessed Sarah Brooks attempt to contact Lily?" "Yes. She showed up at the school unannounced. Lily was terrified." "Objection!" Sarah's lawyer was on his feet again. "The witness is editorializing." "Sustained. Stick to the facts, Ms. Collins." Maya nodded. "Sarah came to the school without permission. Lily came home scared and asked not to see her again." The judge made a note, and Angela sat down. Sarah's lawyer tried to discredit Maya, tried to paint her as someone who had inserted herself into a family to play house. But Maya didn't flinch. She answered every question with the same calm steadiness, and by the time she stepped down, Daniel could see the frustration on the other lawyer's face. Then Lily was called. Daniel's stomach dropped. Angela had warned him this might happen, but he'd hoped the judge would spare her. Lily was only 7. She shouldn't have to be part of this, but the judge wanted to hear from her. Lily walked to the stand, clutching her stuffed rabbit, looking impossibly small in the big courtroom. The judge spoke to her gently, asking simple questions about school, about home, about how she felt. "Do you know why you're here today, Lily?" the judge asked. "Because my mom wants to see me. And how do you feel about that?" Lily looked down at her rabbit. "I don't want to." "Can you tell me why?" "Because she left. And she scared me when she came to my school. And I don't know her." "Do you feel safe with your dad?" "Yes." "And do you want to live with him?" "Yes." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Lily. You can go back to your seat now." Lily climbed down and ran to Daniel, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight while the judge reviewed the case files. Finally, the judge looked up. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm denying the petition for joint custody. Ms. Brooks, you abandoned your parental responsibilities for 3 years without cause. Your recent attempts at contact have been erratic and in some cases inappropriate. I see no compelling reason to disrupt the stable environment Mr. Brooks has provided." She looked at Sarah. "If you wish to reestablish a relationship with your daughter, I recommend you pursue family therapy and supervised visitation through the proper channels. But I will not order Mr. Brooks to facilitate contact at this time." Sarah's face crumpled, but the judge wasn't finished. "Mr. Brooks, the protective order will remain in place. Miss Brooks is not to contact you or Lily except through legal counsel. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down, and it was over. Daniel sat there, stunned, while Angela gathered her papers. "We won," she said quietly. "Yeah," Daniel said. "We did." Outside the courtroom, Maya was waiting. Lily ran to her, and Maya scooped her up, holding her close. Daniel followed, his legs shaky, his mind still trying to catch up. "Is it really over?" Maya asked. "For now," Angela said. "Sarah can appeal, but I doubt she will. She doesn't have the grounds." Daniel nodded, too exhausted to feel relief yet. They drove home in silence. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her rabbit clutched to her chest, and Maya reached over and took Daniel's hand. "You did it," she said. "We did it. No, you. You fought for her, and you won." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in months, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. When they got home, he carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed. She stirred just long enough to mumble, "Love you, Dad," before falling back asleep. "Love you too, kid," he whispered. He found Maya in the kitchen, making tea. She handed him a mug, and they stood there in the quiet, letting the weight of the day settle. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for everything, for being there, for testifying, for not running when this got hard." Maya set down her mug and stepped closer. "I told you, I'm not going anywhere." Daniel pulled her into his arms and held on, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could finally let go of the fear that had been holding him hostage. The storm had passed, and they were still standing. Spring came slowly to Pine Ridge that year, like it was testing the ground before committing. The snow melted in patches, leaving behind brown grass and mud that tracked through the house no matter how many times Daniel told Lily to take off her shoes at the door. The construction season picked up, and Daniel found himself working longer hours again, framing out new houses on the edge of town where families were moving in, looking for the same quiet stability he'd fought so hard to keep. The protective order held. Sarah didn't appeal. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up unannounced. For all intents and purposes, she was gone again. And this time Daniel didn't feel guilty about it. Lily stopped asking about her after a few weeks. It wasn't that she'd forgotten. Daniel could see the questions sometimes, lingering in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. But she'd learned that some things didn't have easy answers. And maybe that was okay. Maybe learning that people could hurt you and still not be worth chasing was a lesson worth knowing, even at 7 years old. Maya became a fixture in their lives in ways that felt natural, inevitable. She had her own key now, her own drawer in Daniel's dresser, her own spot at the table. Lily started calling her Maya instead of Miss Collins, and sometimes when Daniel watched them together, Maya helping with homework or braiding Lily's hair or just sitting next to her on the couch reading, he felt something settle in his chest that he thought was broken for good. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Maya had her own baggage, her own moments where she pulled back or got quiet, and Daniel was still learning how to ask what was wrong instead of assuming she'd tell him. They fought sometimes, small things mostly, like whose turn it was to do the dishes or whether Lily should be allowed to watch TV before homework. But they didn't fight the way Daniel and Sarah had fought, where every argument was a proxy war for deeper grievances neither of them could articulate. These fights ended with apologies and adjustments, not slammed doors and days of silence. One Saturday in late April, Maya came over with a proposal. "I want to take Lily camping," she said. They were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee, while Lily played in the yard, building something elaborate with sticks and rocks that only made sense in her head. Daniel looked at her. "Camping?" "Yeah, there's a campground about an hour north. I used to go with my sister when we were kids. I think Lily would love it." "You want to take her alone?" "I was thinking the 3 of us, but if you're not into it, I can take her myself." Daniel considered it. He'd never been camping. His father had died when he was young, and his mother had been too busy keeping the family afloat to worry about leisure activities. The idea of sleeping in a tent, cooking over a fire, being away from the house, it all felt foreign and vaguely uncomfortable. But Lily had overheard, and she came running over, her face lit up with excitement. "Can we? Please, Dad, I've never been camping." Daniel looked at Maya, who was trying not to smile, and then at Lily, whose eyes were practically glowing. "Yeah," he said, "we can go." Lily let out a whoop and ran back to her stick fort, already planning out loud what she'd bring. Maya leaned over and kissed his cheek. "You won't regret it." "I already regret it," she laughed. "Liar." They went the following weekend. Daniel borrowed a tent from Marco, who found the whole thing hilarious and spent 20 minutes giving unsolicited advice about how not to get eaten by bears. Maya packed enough food for a week, even though they were only going for 2 nights, and Lily brought her stuffed rabbit, 3 books, and a flashlight she insisted was necessary for exploring. The campground was small and quiet, tucked into a stretch of forest that felt miles away from everything, even though it was barely off the highway. They set up the tent together, or rather, Maya and Lily set up the tent while Daniel fumbled with poles and stakes and tried to pretend he knew what he was doing. "You've really never done this before?" Maya asked, watching him struggle with a corner. "Not once." "How is that possible? You grew up here." "Growing up here and growing up camping are 2 different things." Lily giggled. "Dad's bad at this." "I'm not bad. I'm learning." "You put that pole in backwards." Daniel looked down. She was right. "I knew that." "Sure you did." By the time they got the tent up and the sleeping bags laid out, the sun was starting to set. Maya built a fire with the kind of easy competence that made Daniel feel both impressed and slightly inadequate, and they roasted hot dogs on sticks while Lily chattered about everything and nothing. "This is the best day ever," Lily announced, her face smudged with ash and ketchup. "We just got here," Daniel said. "I know, but it's still the best." They stayed up later than they should have, telling stories and watching the stars come out. Lily fell asleep between them in the tent, her head on Maya's shoulder, and Daniel lay there listening to the sound of the woods, crickets, wind in the trees, the distant hoot of an owl, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile, temporary kind that could shatter at the first sign of trouble, but the deep, steady kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Maya shifted beside him, careful not to wake Lily, and whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm good." "Good." She reached over and laced her fingers through his, and Daniel held on, feeling the warmth of her hand in the cool night air. The next morning, they hiked to a clearing overlooking the valley. Lily ran ahead, her energy boundless, while Daniel and Maya followed at a slower pace. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, and the sun filtered through the trees in golden shafts that made everything look softer, kinder. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said after a while. "Sure." "Do you ever think about the future? Like, really think about it?" Daniel glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean us. Where this is going." He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I think about it. Yeah." "And?" "And I don't know. I'm not good at planning that far ahead. I just know I don't want this to end." Maya smiled, small and sad. "That's not very romantic." "I'm not very romantic." "I know. It's one of the things I like about you." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "I'm serious, Maya. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if I'm supposed to propose or move in together or just keep doing what we're doing, but I know I want you in it. You and Lily. That's all I've got." Maya looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she said, "That's enough." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She kissed him, quick and soft, and then called out to Lily to wait up. They kept walking, and Daniel felt the knot in his chest, the one that had been there for years, loosen just a little bit more. By the time summer rolled around, things had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lily finished second grade with high marks and a glowing report from Mrs. Harmon. Daniel's work stayed steady, and he even managed to set aside a little money each month, thinking vaguely about the future in ways he hadn't allowed himself to before. Maya moved some of her things into the house. Not everything, not officially, but enough that it didn't feel strange when she stayed over most nights. They didn't talk about it, they just let it happen. One evening in July, Daniel's mother came over for dinner. She'd been quieter than usual lately, and Daniel had chalked it up to her getting older, slowing down. But when she sat down at the table and looked at him with that serious expression she got when she had something important to say, he braced himself. "I'm selling the house," she said. Daniel set down his fork. "What?" "I'm selling the house. It's too big, too much work. I'm moving into one of those senior communities over in Millbrook, the ones with the little cottages." "Mom, you don't have to do that." "I want to. I've been thinking about it for a while, and besides, it's time." Lily looked up. "Does that mean you're moving away, Grandma?" "Just a little bit, sweetheart, but you can visit anytime." Daniel felt something shift. His mother had lived in that house for 40 years. It was the house he'd grown up in, the house where she'd raised him and his brothers after their father died. And now she was leaving. "When?" he asked. "End of the summer. I've already got a buyer lined up." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Later, after his mother had left and Lily was in bed, Maya found him sitting on the porch, staring out at the dark yard. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down next to him. "I don't know. It's stupid. It's just a house." "It's not stupid. It's your mom. It's the place you grew up. It's allowed to feel big." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "She's getting older, I know that. But I didn't think about what that meant, that she wouldn't always be here, that things would change." "Everything changes," Maya said softly. "That's the deal." "I know. But you've got me, and Lily, and your mom's not going far. She's just downsizing. That's not the same as leaving." Daniel looked at her. "When did you get so smart?" I've always been smart. You're just now noticing." He laughed, and it felt good, necessary. That night, lying in bed, Daniel thought about what his mother had said. It's time. Time for what? Time to let go of the past? Time to make room for something new? He didn't have the answers, but maybe that was okay. Maybe the point wasn't to have all the answers. Maybe it was just to keep moving forward, one day at a time, and trust that the people you loved would be there when you stumbled. In August, they helped his mother pack up the house. It took 2 weekends and more boxes than Daniel thought possible. Lily helped by labeling things in her messy 7-year-old handwriting, and Maya organized the kitchen with the kind of efficiency that made Daniel's mother declare she was keeping her. "You're a good one," his mother said to Maya when Daniel was out of earshot, carrying a box to the truck. Maya smiled. "He's worth it." "He is, but he doesn't always believe that. So you keep reminding him." "I will." When the house was finally empty, Daniel stood in the living room one last time, looking at the walls that had held so much of his life. His mother came up beside him and put a hand on his arm. "You turned out good," she said quietly. "Better than I thought you would after everything you went through." "Mom, I mean it. You could have been bitter. You could have shut down completely. But you didn't. You built a life for that little girl, and you let someone in when you didn't think you could. That takes guts." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'm just trying not to screw it up. None of us know what we're doing. We just do the best we can and hope it's enough." She squeezed his arm. "And you're enough, Daniel. You always have been." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and they walked out together. By the time fall came around again, Daniel realized he'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sarah hadn't contacted them in months. The protective order was still in place, and Angela had warned him it might be years before Sarah tried anything again, if she ever did. Lily had started 3rd grade, and she was thriving in ways that made Daniel's chest ache with pride. She'd made new friends, joined the school's art club, and started asking questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dogs dreamed. And Maya was there for all of it. One Saturday in October, Daniel woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. He walked downstairs to find Maya and Lily in the kitchen, flour everywhere, laughing about something he'd missed. "Morning," Maya said, glancing over her shoulder. "We made breakfast." "Well, Lily made breakfast. I supervised." "They're really good, Dad," Lily said, flipping a slightly lopsided pancake. "I only burned 2. Daniel poured himself coffee and sat down at the table watching them work. And he thought about how strange it was, how life could break you open and then, slowly, fill you back up with things you didn't know you needed. After breakfast, Lily went outside to play, and Daniel helped Maya clean up the kitchen. "I've been thinking," Maya said, scrubbing a pan. "About what?" "About moving in, officially." Daniel looked at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah, I mean, I'm already here most of the time anyway, and it feels right, but only if you want me to." Daniel set down the dish towel and turned her to face him. "I want you to." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Maya smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Daniel feel like he'd done something right for once in his life. "Okay then," she said. "Let's do it." They told Lily that night over dinner, and her reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "Does this mean Maya's staying forever?" "If she wants to," Daniel said. Lily looked at Maya. "Do you want to?" "I do." "Good, because you make better pancakes than Dad." Maya laughed. "Deal." And just like that, it was settled. The days that followed were full of small, ordinary moments that added up to something bigger than Daniel had realized he was building. Maya brought over her books, her plants, her collection of coffee mugs that didn't match. She rearranged the living room and painted Lily's bedroom a soft lavender that Lily had picked out after an hour of deliberation at the hardware store. She made the house feel lived in a way it hadn't since Sarah left. But it wasn't always easy. There were moments when Daniel still pulled back, still defaulted to silence instead of communication. There were nights when Maya got frustrated with him for shutting her out, and mornings when they had to apologize and start over. There were growing pains, adjustments, compromises neither of them had anticipated. But they worked through it, because that's what you did when you loved someone. You didn't give up at the first sign of difficulty. You showed up. You tried. You figured it out together. One night in November, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel and Maya sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between them, talking about nothing in particular. And then out of nowhere, Maya said, "I love this life we're building." Daniel looked at her. "Yeah? Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's ours." "It is. And I love you. I know I've said it before, but I wanted to say it again because I mean it." Daniel felt something in his chest crack open, and he realized he wasn't afraid anymore. "Not of this. Not of her. I love you too," he said, "more than I thought I could." Maya leaned over and kissed him, slow and soft, and for a long time they just sat there, holding each other in the quiet. Winter came again, and with it, the familiar rhythm of cold mornings and early nights. But this time, Daniel wasn't bracing for disaster. He wasn't waiting for everything to fall apart. He was just living. On Christmas morning, Lily woke them up at 6, bouncing on the bed and demanding they come downstairs immediately. Daniel groaned and pulled a pillow over his head, but Maya was already up, grinning. "Come on," she said, tugging at his arm. "It's Christmas." They went downstairs and Lily tore into her presents with the kind of unbridled joy only kids could manage. Daniel and Maya sat on the floor drinking coffee and watching her, and Daniel felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost knocked him over. This was what mattered. Not the past, not the what-ifs, just this. Later, after Lily had settled down with her new books and toys, Maya handed Daniel a small box. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. Inside was a keychain, simple, silver, engraved with 3 words. "We're still standing." Daniel looked up at her, his throat tight. "I saw it a few months ago and thought of us," Maya said. "Everything we've been through, everything we've survived, we're still here." Daniel pulled her close and held on, and he realized something he should have known all along. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new on top of it. It was about choosing, every single day, to show up for the people you loved and trusting them to show up for you. It was messy and imperfect and hard, but it was real, and that made it worth it. As the months turned into a year and then another, Daniel's life became something he'd never thought possible. Lily grew taller, smarter, braver. She stopped asking about Sarah altogether, and Daniel stopped feeling guilty about it. Maya became more than just his partner. She became family, woven into the fabric of their lives in ways that felt permanent and right. They didn't have a perfect love story. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic proposal, no moment where everything clicked into place and the music swelled. Instead, they had 1,000 small moments. Quiet mornings, shared dinners, nights on the porch, arguments that ended in apologies, laughter that filled the house. A life built one day at a time, with intention and care. And Daniel learned something he hadn't known before. That love wasn't about finding someone who fixed you. It was about finding someone who saw you, broken pieces and all, and chose to stay anyway. It was about building something together, slowly and steadily, and trusting that it would hold. One evening in late spring, almost 2 years after that first coffee meeting, Daniel found himself sitting on the porch again, watching Lily and Maya chase each other around the yard. Lily was laughing, her hair wild, her face flushed with happiness. Maya caught her and spun her around, and Lily shrieked with delight. Daniel's mother had been right. He had turned out okay. Not because he'd done everything perfectly, but because he'd kept trying, because he'd let people in, because he'd learned that being enough didn't mean being perfect. It just meant showing up. Maya came over and sat down next to him, slightly out of breath. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just this. All of it." "Good thoughts?" "Yeah, really good." She smiled and took his hand, and they sat there together, watching Lily play in the fading light. Somewhere out there, Sarah was living her own life, making her own choices. Daniel didn't know if she ever thought about them, if she regretted the things she'd done, and he realized he didn't need to know. Her story was hers. His was his. And his story, messy, imperfect, real, was finally one he was proud of. Because in the end, the hardest thing wasn't surviving the storm. It was learning to trust the calm that came after. Learning to believe that you deserved happiness, that you were capable of love, that the life you built with your own 2 hands could be enough. Daniel had learned that, and so had Lily. And together, with Maya by their side, they'd keep learning it, one day at a time, for as long as they had. The past didn't disappear. It never did. But it didn't have to define you. You could carry it with you and still move forward. You could be broken and still be whole. You could survive and still find joy. That was the lesson. That was the truth. And in the quiet rhythm of Pine Ridge, in the warmth of the home they'd built together, Daniel finally understood what it meant to live again. Not just survive, not just exist, but live, fully, messily, imperfectly, and without apology. And that, more than anything, was enough. Spring came slowly to Pine Ridge that year, like it was testing the ground before committing. The snow melted in patches, leaving behind brown grass and mud that tracked through the house no matter how many times Daniel told Lily to take off her shoes at the door. The construction season picked up, and Daniel found himself working longer hours again, framing out new houses on the edge of town where families were moving in, looking for the same quiet stability he'd fought so hard to keep. The protective order held. Sarah didn't appeal. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up unannounced. For all intents and purposes, she was gone again. And this time, Daniel didn't feel guilty about it. Lily stopped asking about her after a few weeks. It wasn't that she'd forgotten. Daniel could see the questions sometimes, lingering in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. But she'd learned that some things didn't have easy answers. And maybe that was okay. Maybe learning that people could hurt you and still not be worth chasing was a lesson worth knowing, even at 7 years old. Maya became a fixture in their lives in ways that felt natural, inevitable. She had her own key now, her own drawer in Daniel's dresser, her own spot at the table. Lily started calling her Maya instead of Miss Collins. And sometimes, when Daniel watched them together, Maya helping with homework or braiding Lily's hair or just sitting next to her on the couch, reading, he felt something settle in his chest that he'd thought was broken for good. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Maya had her own baggage, her own moments where she pulled back or got quiet, and Daniel was still learning how to ask what was wrong instead of assuming she'd tell him. They fought sometimes, small things mostly, like whose turn it was to do the dishes or whether Lily should be allowed to watch TV before homework. But they didn't fight the way Daniel and Sarah had fought, where every argument was a proxy war for deeper grievances neither of them could articulate. These fights ended with apologies and adjustments, not slammed doors and days of silence. One Saturday in late April, Maya came over with a proposal. "I want to take Lily camping," she said. They were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee while Lily played in the yard, building something elaborate with sticks and rocks that only made sense in her head. Daniel looked at her. "Camping?" "Yeah. There's a campground about an hour north. I used to go with my sister when we were kids. I think Lily would love it." "You want to take her alone?" "I was thinking the 3 of us. But if you're not into it, I can take her myself." Daniel considered it. He'd never been camping. His father had died when he was young, and his mother had been too busy keeping the family afloat to worry about leisure activities. The idea of sleeping in a tent, cooking over a fire, being away from the house, it all felt foreign and vaguely uncomfortable. But Lily had overheard, and she came running over, her face lit up with excitement. "Can we? Please, Dad? I've never been camping." Daniel looked at Maya, who was trying not to smile, and then at Lily, whose eyes were practically glowing. "Yeah," he said. "We can go." Lily let out a whoop and ran back to her stick fort, already planning out loud what she'd bring. Maya leaned over and kissed his cheek. "You won't regret it. I already regret it." She laughed. "Liar." They went the following weekend. Daniel borrowed a tent from Marco, who found the whole thing hilarious and spent 20 minutes giving unsolicited advice about how not to get eaten by bears. Maya packed enough food for a week, even though they were only going for 2 nights, and Lily brought her stuffed rabbit, 3 books, and a flashlight she insisted was necessary for exploring. The campground was small and quiet, tucked into a stretch of forest that felt miles away from everything, even though it was barely off the highway. They set up the tent together, or rather, Maya and Lily set up the tent, while Daniel fumbled with poles and stakes and tried to pretend he knew what he was doing. "You've really never done this before?" Maya asked, watching him struggle with a corner. "Not once." "How is that possible? You grew up here." "Growing up here and growing up camping are 2 different things," Lily giggled. "Dad's bad at this." "I'm not bad, I'm learning." "You put that pole in backwards." Daniel looked down. She was right. "I knew that." "Sure you did." By the time they got the tent up and the sleeping bags laid out, The sun was starting to set. Maya built a fire with the kind of easy competence that made Daniel feel both impressed and slightly inadequate, and they roasted hot dogs on sticks while Lily chattered about everything and nothing. "This is the best day ever," Lily announced, her face smudged with ash and ketchup. "We just got here," Daniel said. "I know, but it's still the best." They stayed up later than they should have, telling stories and watching the stars come out. Lily fell asleep between them in the tent, her head on Maya's shoulder, and Daniel lay there listening to the sound of the woods, crickets, wind in the trees, the distant hoot of an owl, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile, temporary kind that could shatter at the first sign of trouble, but the deep, steady kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Maya shifted beside him, careful not to wake Lily, and whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm good." "Good." She reached over and laced her fingers through his, and Daniel held on, feeling the warmth of her hand in the cool night air. The next morning, they hiked to a clearing overlooking the valley. Lily ran ahead, her energy boundless, while Daniel and Maya followed at a slower pace. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, and the sun filtered through the trees in golden shafts that made everything look softer, kinder. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said after a while. "Sure." "Do you ever think about the future? Like, really think about it?" Daniel glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean us. Where this is going." He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I think about it, yeah." "And?" "And I don't know. I'm not good at planning that far ahead. I just know I don't want this to end." Maya smiled, small and sad. "That's not very romantic." "I'm not very romantic." "I know. It's one of the things I like about you." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "I'm serious, Maya. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if I'm supposed to propose or move in together or just keep doing what we're doing, but I know I want you in it, you and Lily. That's all I've got." Maya looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she said, "That's enough." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She kissed him, quick and soft, and then called out to Lily to wait up. They kept walking, and Daniel felt the knot in his chest, the one that had been there for years, loosen just a little bit more. By the time summer rolled around, things had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lily finished second grade with high marks and a glowing report from Mrs. Harmon. Daniel's work stayed steady, and he even managed to set aside a little money each month, thinking vaguely about the future in ways he hadn't allowed himself to before. Maya moved some of her things into the house. Not everything, not officially, but enough that it didn't feel strange when she stayed over most nights. They didn't talk about it. They just let it happen. One evening in July, Daniel's mother came over for dinner. She'd been quieter than usual lately, and Daniel had chalked it up to her getting older, slowing down. But when she sat down at the table and looked at him with that serious expression she got when she had something important to say, he braced himself. "I'm selling the house," she said. Daniel set down his fork. "What?" "I'm selling the house. It's too big, too much work. I'm moving into one of those senior communities over in Millbrook, the ones with the little cottages." "Mom, you don't have to do that." "I want to. I've been thinking about it for a while. And besides, it's time." Lily looked up. "Does that mean you're moving away, Grandma?" "Just a little bit, sweetheart, but you can visit any time." Daniel felt something shift. His mother had lived in that house for 40 years. It was the house he'd grown up in, the house where she'd raised him and his brothers after their father died. And now she was leaving. "When?" he asked. "End of the summer. I've already got a buyer lined up." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Later, after his mother had left and Lily was in bed, Maya found him sitting on the porch, staring out at the dark yard. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down next to him. "I don't know, it's stupid. It's just a house." "It's not stupid. It's your mom. It's the place you grew up. It's allowed to feel big." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "She's getting older, I know that. But I didn't think about what that meant, that she wouldn't always be here, that things would change." "Everything changes," Maya said softly. "That's the deal." "I know, but you've got me, and Lily. And your mom's not going far, she's just downsizing. That's not the same as leaving." Daniel looked at her. "When did you get so smart?" I've always been smart. You're just now noticing. He laughed, and it felt good. Necessary. That night, lying in bed, Daniel thought about what his mother had said. It's time. Time for what? Time to let go of the past? Time to make room for something new? He didn't have the answers. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the point wasn't to have all the answers. Maybe it was just to keep moving forward, one day at a time, and trust that the people you loved would be there when you stumbled. In August, they helped his mother pack up the house. It took 2 weekends and more boxes than Daniel thought possible. Lily helped by labeling things in her messy 7-year-old handwriting, and Maya organized the kitchen with the kind of efficiency that made Daniel's mother declare she was keeping her. "You're a good one," his mother said to Maya when Daniel was out of earshot, carrying a box to the truck. Maya smiled. "He's worth it."
He is. But he doesn't always believe that. So you keep reminding him. I will. When the house was finally empty, Daniel stood in the living room one last time, looking at the walls that had held so much of his life. His mother came up beside him and put a hand on his arm. "You turned out good," she said quietly. "Better than I thought you would after everything you went through." Mom said...
"I mean it. You could have been bitter. You could have shut down completely. But you didn't. You built a life for that little girl, and you let someone in when you didn't think you could. That takes guts." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'm just trying not to screw it up. None of us know what we're doing. We just do the best we can and hope it's enough." She squeezed his arm. "And you're enough, Daniel. You always have been." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and they walked out together. By the time fall came around again, Daniel realized he'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sarah hadn't contacted them in months. The protective order was still in place, and Angela had warned him it might be years before Sarah tried anything again, if she ever did. Lily had started 3rd grade, and she was thriving in ways that made Daniel's chest ache with pride. She'd made new friends, joined the school's art club, and started asking questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dogs dreamed. And Maya was there for all of it. One Saturday in October, Daniel woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. He walked downstairs to find Maya and Lily in the kitchen, flour everywhere, laughing about something he'd missed. "Morning," Maya said, glancing over her shoulder. "We made breakfast." "Well, Lily made breakfast. I supervised." "They're really good, Dad," Lily said, flipping a slightly lopsided pancake. "I only burned 2. Daniel poured himself coffee and sat down at the table, watching them work. And he thought about how strange it was, how life could break you open and then, slowly, fill you back up with things you didn't know you needed. After breakfast, Lily went outside to play, and Daniel helped Maya clean up the kitchen. "I've been thinking," Maya said, scrubbing a pan. "About what?" "About moving in. Officially." Daniel looked at her. "Yeah?"
"Yeah, I mean, I'm already here most of the time anyway, and it feels right, but only if you want me to." Daniel set down the dish towel and turned her to face him. "I want you to." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Maya smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Daniel feel like he'd done something right for once in his life. "Okay then," she said. "Let's do it." They told Lily that night over dinner, and her reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "Does this mean Maya's staying forever?"
"If she wants to," Daniel said. Lily looked at Maya. "Do you want to?" "I do." "Good. Because you make better pancakes than Dad." Maya laughed. "Deal." And just like that, it was settled. The days that followed were full of small, ordinary moments that added up to something bigger than Daniel had realized he was building. Maya brought over her books, her plants, her collection of coffee mugs that didn't match. She rearranged the living room and painted Lily's bedroom a soft lavender that Lily had picked out after an hour of deliberation at the hardware store. She made the house feel lived in a way it hadn't since Sarah left. But it wasn't always easy. There were moments when Daniel still pulled back, still defaulted to silence instead of communication. There were nights when Maya got frustrated with him for shutting her out, and mornings when they had to apologize and start over. There were growing pains, adjustments, compromises neither of them had anticipated, but they worked through it. Because that's what you did when you loved someone. You didn't give up at the first sign of difficulty. You showed up, you tried,
You figured it out together. One night in November, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel and Maya sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between them, talking about nothing in particular. And then, out of nowhere, Maya said, "I love this life we're building." Daniel looked at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's ours." "It is."
And I love you. I know I've said it before, but I wanted to say it again, because I mean it. Daniel felt something in his chest crack open, and he realized he wasn't afraid anymore. Not of this. Not of her. "I love you too," he said. "More than I thought I could." Maya leaned over and kissed him, slow and soft, and for a long time they just sat there, holding each other in the quiet. Winter came again, and with it, the familiar rhythm of cold mornings and early nights. But this time, Daniel wasn't bracing for disaster. He wasn't waiting for everything to fall apart. He was just living. On Christmas morning, Lily woke them up at 6, bouncing on the bed and demanding they come downstairs immediately. Daniel groaned and pulled a pillow over his head, but Maya was already up, grinning. "Come on," she said, tugging at his arm. "It's Christmas." They went downstairs, and Lily tore into her presence with the kind of unbridled joy only kids could manage. Daniel and Maya sat on the floor, drinking coffee and watching her, and Daniel felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost knocked him over. This was what mattered. Not the past, not the what-ifs, just this. Later, after Lily had settled down with her new books and toys, Maya handed Daniel a small box. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. Inside was a keychain, simple, silver, engraved with 3 words. "We're still standing." Daniel looked up at her, his throat tight. "I saw it a few months ago and thought of us," Maya said. "Everything we've been through, everything we've survived. We're still here." Daniel pulled her close and held on, and he realized something he should have known all along. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new on top of it. It was about choosing every single day to show up for the people you loved and trusting them to show up for you. It was messy and imperfect and hard, but it was real, and that made it worth it. As winter gave way to spring again, Daniel found himself thinking less about what he'd lost and more about what he'd gained. He'd spent so many years carrying the weight of Sarah's abandonment, letting it define him, letting it dictate how he moved through the world. But somewhere along the way, he'd set that weight down. Not because someone had told him to, but because he'd finally realized he didn't need it anymore. The truth was, people left. They made promises they couldn't keep. They hurt you in ways you didn't see coming, and sometimes they disappeared without explanation. That was part of being human, but so was staying. So was showing up day after day, even when it was hard, even when you were tired, even when you didn't have all the answers. Sarah had taught him what it felt like to be abandoned, but Maya had taught him what it felt like to be chosen. And that made all the difference. One afternoon in April, Daniel was working on a deck for a client on the outskirts of town when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Daniel Brooks?" "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Linda Mercer. I'm Sarah's mother." Daniel's jaw tightened. He hadn't heard from Sarah's family since the divorce. They'd cut him off completely when Sarah left, taking her side without question. "What do you want?" "I wanted to let you know that Sarah's in rehab. She's been struggling for a while now. Addiction. I don't know all the details, but she asked me to reach out." Daniel was quiet, processing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she wanted you to know. She wanted you to know that she's trying to get better, and she wanted me to apologize on her behalf. For everything. She should apologize herself." "I know, but she's not in a place to do that right now. Maybe one day, but not yet." Daniel closed his eyes. Part of him wanted to hang up. Part of him wanted to say it was too little, too late. But another part of him, the part that had learned what it meant to move forward, just felt tired. "Tell her I hope she gets the help she needs," he said finally. "But I'm not waiting around for her to figure it out. Lily's doing fine. We're doing fine, and that's not changing. I understand. Thank you for listening." She hung up, and Daniel stood there for a moment, staring at his phone. When he got home that night, he told Maya about the call. She listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she said, "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Sad, I guess. For her, but also relieved. Because it's not my problem anymore. It never was. I know, but I didn't always believe that. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. You did everything you could. You protected Lily. You built a life. That's all anyone can ask. Daniel nodded. Yeah, I guess it is. That night, he lay in bed next to Maya, listening to the sound of her breathing, and thought about how strange it was that closure didn't always come in the form you expected. Sometimes it was just a phone call. Sometimes it was just letting go of the need to understand why someone hurt you. Sometimes it was just deciding that you didn't need their apology to move on. Sarah's addiction wasn't his fault. Her choices weren't his responsibility. And Lily's happiness didn't depend on whether Sarah ever got her life together. It just depended on him showing up, day after day, year after year, building something steady and safe and real. And that he could do. By the time summer came around again, Lily was 8 years old and asking about things like sleepovers and whether she could get her ears pierced. Daniel and Maya had fallen into a routine that felt less like coexistence and more like partnership. They split the chores, the bills, the decisions. They fought occasionally, but they always came back to each other. They laughed more than they argued. They made plans, small ones like weekend trips and birthday parties, and bigger ones, like whether they'd ever get married or what they'd do when Lily went to college. One Saturday in August, Daniel woke up to find Maya already dressed and packing a cooler. Where are you going? We're going, she corrected, to the lake. I told Lily we'd take her swimming. Daniel groaned. I didn't agree to this. You did. Last night. You were half asleep, but you said yes. That doesn't count. It absolutely counts. Now get up. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Daniel got up. They drove to the lake with the windows down, music playing, Lily singing along in the back seat. When they got there, the water was cold and clear, and Lily ran straight in, shrieking with delight. Daniel and Maya followed more slowly, wading in up to their knees. This is nice, Maya said, watching Lily splash around. It is. We should do this more often. We should do a lot of things more often. Maya looked at him. Like what? Daniel thought about it. I don't know, just this. Being together, not worrying about what comes next. I like the sound of that. They stood there in the water watching Lily, and Daniel realized something he'd been too scared to admit for a long time. He was happy, not in some abstract future tense way, but right now, in this moment, with these people, and that was enough. As the afternoon stretched into evening, they sat on the shore, eating sandwiches and watching the sun set over the water. Lily fell asleep with her head in Maya's lap, exhausted from swimming, and Daniel sat next to them, feeling the warmth of the fading sun on his face. Thank you, he said quietly. Maya looked over. For what? For not giving up on me. For staying. For all of it. Maya smiled. You make it sound like it was hard. Wasn't it? Sometimes. But not in the way you think. You're not as difficult as you think you are, Daniel. You're just human. Daniel reached over and took her hand. So are you. I know. That's why this works. They sat there in silence, and Daniel thought about all the ways his life had changed in the past 2 years. How he'd gone from barely surviving to actually living. How he'd learned to trust again, to love again, to believe that the people around him wouldn't disappear if he looked away for too long. It hadn't been easy, and it hadn't been smooth, but it had been real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. As they packed up and headed home, Lily still half asleep in the back seat, Daniel looked over at Maya and felt something settle in his chest, something that felt a lot like peace. They pulled into the driveway just as the stars were coming out, and Daniel carried Lily inside and put her to bed. When he came back downstairs, Maya was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. She didn't even wake up, Daniel said. She's wiped out. Good day? Yeah, it was. Maya set down the magazine and patted the seat next to her. Daniel sat, and she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm glad we did this, she said. Me too. They sat there in the quiet, and Daniel thought about how far he'd come. From a man who'd been too scared to let anyone in, to someone who'd built a family. Not the one he'd planned for, but the one he'd needed. And he realized something important. Life didn't always give you what you expected. It didn't always go the way you planned. But if you were willing to show up, to keep trying, to let people in even when it scared you, it could still give you something worth holding on to. That was the lesson Daniel had learned. That was the truth he carried with him. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was hard. It was about building something together, brick by brick, day by day, and trusting that it would hold. And in the quiet rhythm of Pine Ridge, in the warmth of the home they'd built together, Daniel finally understood what it meant to be enough. Not because he'd done everything right, not because he'd fixed all his mistakes, but because he'd kept going, because he'd let himself be loved, because he'd learned that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about refusing to let it define your future. And that, more than anything, was the victory. As the night deepened and the house settled into silence, Daniel sat there with Maya beside him and Lily asleep upstairs, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Gratitude for the messy, imperfect, beautiful life they'd built together, for the second chances he'd been given, for the people who'd stayed when it would have been easier to leave, and for the simple, profound truth that sometimes the best thing you could do was just keep showing up, one day at a time, one moment at a time, until you looked back and realized you'd built something worth keeping.